Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for our Leo training course on adaptive teaching in terms of the whole class reading approach. Thank you all very much for signing up as well. As you may have heard, today, as always, we do record all of our sessions for our Leo YouTube channel. Recordings will be sent out and they will also be uploaded to our drive along with any additional resources as well. So please feel free, if you do want anything or you do want any further information, always request it in the chat function and I will always do my best to find some resources, find something applicable and get it to you as well. It's not a problem at all. If you haven't been to the course before or you're not sure who I am, my name is Christopher Perrett. I'm the Director of English for Leo Academy Trust. English is a big passion of mine and I'm no by means an expert, but I do have a lot of kind of passion towards it as well. And it's something that I live and breathe in terms of teaching it across Leo Academy as well. Now, in terms of today's session, we're going to be looking at the whole class reading model, something that we have introduced in September. And we're currently reviewing and we're looking at how we can move this forward into September. And already this half term, I've seen some fantastic practice going on around our Leo schools. And it'll be really good to feed that back, but also to look at some of the kind of ways that we can adapt it, improve it, tweak it, and make sure that it is most purposeful as possible for our children. Now, it's really nice to see that I've also got some English leads on here as well. And in terms of this whole school approach, this was designed by the English team across Leo. So again, a big shout out and big thank you to Nadine Williamson and the team as well from last year, because again, it was a real big labour of love project. So it's really nice to see it come alive and being used so effectively as well. Now, I do ask that obviously with today's training, anything you do hear, anything that you kind of hear me say, that has come from the gospel, okay? That has come from myself. So you have permission to go back to your teams and say, actually, this is what Chris had said. This is how we should be doing things. This is the approach that we are or we should be taking as well. And again, if you're not too sure, again, always refer back to myself or your fantastic English leads as well, because again, we will always make sure that we sing that same message as well. So in today's session, we're going to quickly have a look and remind ourselves about the review of reading, just having a look at the whole class reading, why we do it, its approach, how it came about and the pedagogical knowledge as well. Just look at the structure of the lesson and the ways that it can be adapted to your class style of teaching and to your children. Obviously, the children should be the first and foremost, and then obviously look at some activities that you can do in terms of that as well. Now, I should also say that I'm a very much a talky person, so please feel free to throw questions into the chat and I will always stop and answer them as well. And again, I will always find those opportunities and I will always kind of give you a chance to kind of join in where possible as well. So, as always, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to get into the boring bits. Just this is the knowledge behind it all very much as well. So what is whole class reading? Well, whole class reading is an inclusive approach to promoting and teaching a love of reading for all children at all levels as well. So it's the selection of age-appropriate texts or extracts that not only engage, but provide children to exposure of high-quality vocabulary and genre-specific themes. It's to ensure that children become confident and positive learners for life. And within the whole class reading approach is to develop essential comprehension and vocabulary skills that match the individual progression of skills being taught each week. Furthermore, the planning of reading can pre-teach areas of learning by introducing vocabulary, key ideas, and concepts. Now, for many, especially if you are an older teacher like myself, you will remember the guided reading or the carousel model as well, where children have a series of activities and each day they would go and complete an activity, and once a week they would get a chance to sit with their teacher and have that quality first teaching. Now, as a country and as an educational team, we are now moving towards the whole class model, as theory has proven that that exposure once a week is not enough for children to make rapid or to exceed progress. So whole class reading exposes all children to quality first teaching. They're getting more than they should do, or even better, they get even better than if, of being taught by the teacher, with assessment being made in the lesson, misconceptions being corrected, whilst also being exposed to a range of texts as well. So the purpose of whole class reading is to raise the standards in reading comprehension. Unlike the prerequisite dominance of small group guided reading, in which At times pupils are not taught by the expert in the room, and that's you guys there. That whole class model means that you're being taught by yourselves, that teacher. You are leading from the front, and you are kind of guiding children through those extracts as well. Whole class reading should be built around a discussion-based model, and the whole point is to involve all the children in a discussion around that text, providing key questioning at key moments to extend their learning, to assess their learning, and also just to check their understanding, and then also to model the skills required to comprehend going through as well. Now, I know that for many, not just within Leo, but sometimes there are those concerns, and we will address those today. But the three biggest concerns is, how do you differentiate within a whole class reading? How do you cater for the needs of mixed attainment classes? And as someone on the ground floor who's done it, it is tricky. It is a hard job. And actually, there are ways that you can ensure differentiation is there. Remember, we don't want to dumb down the learning or provide glass ceilings for children. It's about providing scaffolding to ensure that they reach the same level as all the rest in the class as well. We also want to make sure that the texts are inclusive, and also that the children are included individually, making sure they receive equal attention and they have similar opportunities to contribute and practice. And then finally, that assessment model. How does it look like? How do you assess a child? How do you ensure that you are monitoring those individual children's progress? So, breaking it down, whole class reading should be split between an equal amount between looking at fictional texts and poetry and non-fictional texts as well. And as the class teacher, it's really important that you are choosing or selecting texts that are appropriate to your children. Now, within the whole class model, we together have put together a series of texts that we believe are suitable to be used in your year group. Those have been mapped out progressively across the entirety of the term. Now, those texts there are for you to use, to adapt, and to kind of work alongside the teaching of each of the skills. However, you are experts in your field, you do know your children, and sometimes, you have these wonderful books at your availability. So texts can be swapped out and used, and you can bring in various other extracts that possibly link to your topic, link to your science, link to your mathematics, link to all areas of your learning. And sometimes it's about having that confidence. Now, the texts that we provide, these are almost your fallback plans. Should you kind of not feel confident, or you feel actually, you're getting started, these texts are here for you to kind of step into the waters of whole class reading. So within whole class reading, fictional text, it really is about explaining the meaning of words, explaining how narrative content enhances meaning, retrieval and recording, identifying and explaining key details, making inferences, predictions, comparisons, and summarizing. Now, that is a lot of skills for a child to be able to do. So it's really important that we break that down into small steps, just like we would do in all areas of their learning. We wouldn't just throw every single thing in the math curriculum at them in one lesson. Again, it's about taking a small chunk and giving children those quality first steps, that explicit teaching, in order how to make that progress and how to achieve that successfully in their learning. So where does this actually come from? Why are we doing this model? Well, this actually comes from the 2016 curriculum. In 2016, the English was overhauled, and there was now a greater shift and a greater focus on the comprehension. So this was meaning from the text rather than the writer's purpose or viewpoint. There was less emphasis on text structure, so no longer in reading lessons did we have to teach about the subheadings, about where the headings were, the purpose and the content. And the challenge was also now no longer about year 6. And the entirety of the reading papers, unfortunately, we do have to think about those at the end of year 6, but it now draws upon all of the teaching across Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 1. So it's drawing upon all those knowledge and that children have to apply. And what we now need to consider is that we can no longer leave the teaching to year 6 to prepare them for those tests. We need to ensure that children have those skills from an early age, that they're being exposed to quality first texts, they're practicing those skills and developing their understanding. Within the test practice now, there is a greater focus on the meaning of vocabulary. So it's really important that we now ensure that vocabulary is exposed at a young age and children know the skills required to pick that apart. There's a greater focus on retrieving and recording. And in the last 3 test papers in year 6, over 50 to 60% of questions were retrieval based. Now, just to put that into context, if you've never taught in year 6 before, I'm going to put my year 6 hat on, but a reading paper is broken down into 50 marks. Now, for a child to score an expected grade, it shifts every year, but you're roughly looking at between 25 to 30 marks. Now, within each of the test papers, retrieval questions alone, there is usually between, funny enough, 25 to 30 marks. So if children can accurately retrieve all of those questions, they are already at the expected mark. So thinking about that for a second, if we are teaching that from a younger age on how to apply those skills to a text, we are already giving them an advantage when they get to year 6 and no longer just leaving it in the hands of those year 6 teachers. Now, there's also greater focus on making inferences and justifying with evidence from the text, recognizing the difference between fact and fiction, and ordering and sequencing events. Now, you will notice that there is less focus on prediction. Now, prediction is an important skill, and it's one I still believe needs to be taught. It's not one that we should dismiss or get rid of. However, it is not one that needs to be explicitly taught all the time. It's the one that could be done discreetly through the teaching of other and various skills as well. So, just so you know, in case you're wondering where these come from these 7 content domains, and the 7 content domains are what make up all of the reading skills. Now, these are what children are tested on, and these are the skills that children need to practice and develop over their time in Key Stage 2. Some of these, as in questions 2A, which is the meaning of words in context, 2B, retrieval and record, and 2D, inferences, these are your very weighty and much more trickier skills, and therefore greater emphasis is often put on these 3 skills, whereas, for example, making comparisons within the text, and as I said previously, making predictions, 2E, these are less weighty. So therefore, it's about knowing what are those important skills that children need to be exposed to, and the skills they need to revisit and re-practice consistently within their time. So within that, you then have your 5 skills, and this comes back to your Key Stage 1. So again, it's really important that those children are taught from that early age. 1, how to decode words, being able to use their phonetical knowledge to be able to understand graphemes and being able to pull apart the vocabulary. Being able to explain, and again, this comes from oral modeling. We model how to explain, how to pull things apart and how to give it context so that children would be able to do the same. We start by looking at pictures, just like they do in Key Stage 1, before transferring it into the abstract, which is the text. Being able to retrieve, which is finding information, interpret based on evidence, and then considering why the author may have chosen to do something. Now, these 5 skills you may have seen through our symbols, but these are the 5 skills of reading, the 5 core skills that we teach. So when it comes to whole class reading planning, you do all have a medium-term plan, and these are fantastic. But again, it comes down to you as a teacher to pull that apart and really think about, what do I want to include in that lesson? So whole class reading lessons should be planned like any other lesson through teacher assessing, explicitly teaching and modelling the reading skills used within an extract. Whole class comprehension text should be adapted to make them accessible to all pupils. And again, maybe showing them parts of the text, maybe using all of the text, or again, using a text across various days and various lessons as well. Text can also be used to pre-teach areas of the curriculum. It can be used to introduce vocabulary, themes, or it can prepare children in advance for upcoming lessons. And that's why it's really, really key. If you are the person planning lessons, or if you're working across and working with a team, it's important to look at the long term. Look at actually what is coming up across your 6 weeks and look at those texts and go, actually, is there ways that we could insert other texts to pre-teach, to pre-expose, to really think about, I've got a tricky concept in science coming up regarding photosynthesis. So actually the week before, I found a really good reading comprehension that we can actually discuss. It's going to introduce them to that vocabulary. And therefore, when we go into that science lesson, I've already pre-taught some of that knowledge already. Same goes for English. If you're teaching a diary entry the following week, then actually tweaking those texts and saying, I've got a really nice diary entry here. I'll teach that the week before whilst teaching my retrieval skills, and therefore I'm exposing children to the layout, the genre, and the structure of a text. It's about thinking about what is coming up and how you can use that reading in advance. In terms of the actual questioning within your lesson, the majority of comprehension questions that you teach, these should be based on the objective and the skill that you are teaching that week. And we'll come to that a little bit more when we look at the medium-term plans. Now, questions can also discreetly help develop greater test techniques, and I love this because, again, through your modelling, you can also teach children to circle a particular word, underline a phrase, copy the word with accuracy, tick boxes. All these skills can help children when they are completing tests or when they're going into test practice as well. And then finally, your focus groups should be flexible. No longer should you just say that I'm going to take those bottom 6 children and always work with them. It really does come to you assessing those children each lesson and then flexibly changing your groups to match the needs of those children within the lessons as well. Tricky to do. And sometimes you're thinking, planning for that unknown, but actually it's about adapting your teaching to the needs of the children as they emerge as well. So, what should a whole class reading lesson look like? Well, these are all the parts of the reading lesson. So, a starter. This could be through a picture, a video stimulus. It could be exploring vocabulary with the children. It could be through a variety of games, word searches, pictures, watching a video. What did you think about it? There's lots of ways that you could start those children and gain those interests. Others that I've seen is looking at the front cover of the book. What do you think this book is going to be about? Sometimes it's like working through wordplay, working through prefixes, suffixes of words that are going to be exposed in the text later on. Introducing the lesson. So again, thinking about what your objectives are, what do you want the children to achieve, and then introducing the text and steps to success. Reading of the text is important, and this could be through paired, shared, mixed ability, or again, through independent practice. Having that whole class discussion, initial responses, assessing and understanding of the text, and again, also checking children's understanding of what is going on in the story, vocabulary, and word meaning. There needs to be an explicit modelling of skill, using the gradual release model of the I go, we go, you go, using that to teach children those skills explicitly. Children need time to actually practice and apply those skills. And then what they need to do is they need to be challenged. Now, I'm sure you're looking at that thinking, wow, that's a lot to fit in one lesson. And it is a lot to fit in one lesson. And that's why you shouldn't be fitting it all in one lesson. So if you're looking at that thinking, we are, as a team, we're trying to fit in all 7, 8 of those skills, go back to your team and say, actually, what we need to do is we need to be focusing on certain parts at certain points throughout the week. So let's have a look. I'm going to skip ahead a second here. Let's have a look at actually how you could base your week. Now, there are 3 lessons in terms of the guided read of the whole class reading approach. Lesson 1 is what you should be doing is reintroducing the text that you are going to be looking at over the first 2 lessons. And it's good to use the same text in lesson 1 and lesson 2. The reason for this is if you read the text in lesson 1 together and you have that initial discussion and it's an open class discussion, then by the time you go to lesson 2 to model the skills, children have already been pre-exposed, and what you're focusing on as a teacher is actually the explicit modeling of that skill. So lesson 1 should be exposing children to the text, reading, discussing, planning in those questions and looking for those opportunities to pull apart children's understanding, what's going on in the text, how do you know, what do we think this word might mean, how could we figure out in context, asking those children if they've had those experiences, providing those experiences for those unsure, using that time to explore meaning of words and vocabulary. And that again can be through children suggesting what words they don't understand, and as the teacher preempting that. And then also whole class-based activities. And these do not need to be recorded in books. These could be children kind of generating a word bank. These could be children kind of drawing a picture of the image based on a part of the text. What do they think it might look like? What can they see? This could be through, Kahoot quizzes, ed puzzles, Nearpods, using those activities to take them through low-stake retrieval practice. And again, it is that low stake because what you're doing is you're ensuring that children comprehend and understand that text. Before teaching them the skill, what you really should be doing is making sure they understand that text first of all. In terms of reading with the children, there should be that balance of teachers reading, you fluently modelling that, paired reading, children reading with one another, repeated reading, where you model, children might repeat after you, or again, they might say the next line, the choral reading, or again, independently, for those who actually practice some independence in their learning. Now, that lesson 1 is still structured, but again, it does not need to be recorded in books. It's about literally getting inside that text and pulling it apart as well. When you move on to lesson 2, texts should be carried over from lesson 1, still using the same text, because that way you're then moving straight into the actual teaching of the skill. Now, you might want to start your lesson rereading parts of the text, just checking and clarifying, do children still remember that vocabulary? Are children still aware of what has happened in the text? Are children being able to order the text or sequence from their memory based on their skill sets? Then introducing the skill through the steps to success, which can be constructed with the children. Again, that's a really nice group activity to complete with children as well. And then the modelling of the question. And this is really key because what you'll now be doing is spending that larger focus of the beginning of the lesson, modelling how to teach a particular skill using that gradual release model. And then giving children time to practice that skill, practice that same question type over again, and again varying that question type if needed, so that children have time to develop their understanding of how to apply that particular skill set. Then, based on your initial assessment of children, you might find that 80% of the class have mastered that skill. They were able to do it through guided practice, through the gradual release, yet there was 20% of children, they didn't get it. So from your assessment, moving into lesson 3, that 20%, that should be your guided group. And that guided group is where you will take them through the lesson, again, almost as if it's lesson 2. You are almost reteaching that skill and leading them through the various stages. Lesson 3 is where you would introduce a new text. The new text does not always have to be read as a whole class. Because if the children have read the previous text and they've understood it and they've applied it, as a judgment, you now want to see, can they now read a text independently or read it in pairs, shared paired reading, working together in group activity? And then can they now apply those skills that have been taught as an independent practice? Now, you might start the lesson by reading maybe the first paragraph together, just to make sure that they understand what they're reading, or you might highlight key vocabulary. You may go back and say, I'm going to really just show you one more time how to model that skill against a part of the text. And then what you're then doing is giving children now time to go and practice. Can they apply what you've taught them throughout the week to a brand new text? Are they able to take away your teaching and apply that independently? Now, for those children more able, once they've completed that, that's then giving them a choice. And that's where you might revisit other question skills that they want to practice. So a bit like our choice boards, which we've now introduced in our topic lessons, it's almost now giving them a choice in that lesson. You've completed these skills, so why not go and practice your retrieval? Why not go practice your predictive skills? Why not go practice your summarizing skills? And they're then having a choice to go away. For any of us who were here a long time ago, it's a bit like our chili challenges, or it's about like in our maths lessons, having those fluency, reasoning, and those problem solving. It's giving them those abilities to go and practice skills that they can do. But that 20%, that didn't get it on lesson 2, that's going to be your core group. That's the bit that you would keep, and you would almost keep them doing the I go and the we go. And they might not get to the you go at that stage. But this is where you are then taking them through that process. So I'm going to pause there for a second. Any questions regarding that so far? Because I know at that stage, lesson structure has been a big kind of focus on how to kind of look at that and how we kind of work our way through the lesson structure. Okay, so what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to switch over and just have a look at some of the lessons from this week as well. Now, I've very kindly stolen and borrowed these boards as well, and these are from a particular year group. They are fantastic as well. So this is lesson 2. Just to give you an example of how the lesson should look or how it could look as well. And as you can see, the lesson starts off with a visual prompt. It's a picture prompt. And in terms of this picture, it actually relates to the text itself that we're going to read later on. The text that they were asked to read was The Princess and the Goblin. And the picture, funnily enough, it relates. And as you can see, there are question stems there to provide for children. I think that, I know that because. And then what you can do as a teacher is ask the children the questions. How many children can you see? What are the children holding? Why might the children be holding that? What time of the day does this take place? Why do you think they need a lantern? How many stars can you see in the sky? What you're now doing is you're pre-training those children through a visual prompt. It's that visual analysis. You're training them for what you want them to do. And then when you take them into the abstract of the text, they can then continue to apply that skill. Now, let's say, for example, we were doing an inference question and we were looking at why might the characters be acting the way they're acting. I'm now going to train the children to focus on their reactions. So again, looking at the verbs. Look at the characters' faces. How might they be feeling? Can you show that reaction to your partner? What do you think they might be looking at? How might they be feeling as they go deeper into the forest? So already we're starting to now make those predictions. We're starting to make those visual assumptions based on the clues in the text as well. From that, we then move children on to the extract. Now, again, you'll notice I haven't got the entirety of the text. I've got part of the text. And as we read through that, what I'll be doing is interspersing questions, checking children's knowledge as we read through. Who wrote the story? What time of day did it take place? Who was climbing the mountain? All these questions are interspersed as children read through as well. Once we've then read the text, it's then looking at what skills are we focusing on, introducing that skill, looking at the various question types, revisiting the steps to success, and then using those steps to success to model against the text as well. And you can see here our I go, we go, and you go approach. So I'm going to put my teacher hat on here, and I'm just going to kind of show you some of those questions as well. And I'm going to hope this works. So let's get our visualizer on. There we go. Right, so I would always say when you are modelling to the children, it's really important that to model those expectations, I would use a visualizer. Okay, I know some people are fantastic with whiteboards, so if you're really good with whiteboard, please don't feel like you have to go back to your head teacher and say, Chris said we have to have a visualizer. It's just that this is a really good way to kind of model explicitly those skills. Now, here is a text itself. We'll try and zoom in so you can see that a little bit there as well. And just prior, I know I see this really lovely, but prior to teaching a lesson, if I'm going to explore a text with a class, I always beforehand, I go away and I annotate and make those notes. Because actually, before I go into that lesson, I know exactly what I want to pull out, what I want to question, and I want to kind of see that in terms of that knowledge as well. So when I'm then looking at this text and I'm looking for those skills, I then know what I'm pulling apart and modeling. So if we look at this first paragraph, we'll have a quick read of it together as well. And we have got the children stood around. Oh, sorry, I should have said this is a text from Five Children and It as well. Very classic story there about the Samiad as well. So the children stood round the hole in a ring, looking at the creature they had found. It was worth looking at. Its eyes were on long horns like a snail's eyes, and it could move them in and out like telescopes. It had ears like a bat's ears, and its tubby body was shaped like a spider's and covered with thick, soft fur. Its legs and arms were furry too, and it had hands and feet like a monkey. Now, I'm going to model to the children using an explicit technique, and what I want to do is retrieve information. I want to know what this creature looks like. So the first thing that I want to pick out is the word creature. Okay, we're looking at the creature, so I'm going to highlight that so I know where I'm looking. What I'm now doing is I'm explicitly giving the children the directions of how to approach. As I now look through, I'm going to look for any noun phrases. So again, I'm now using my grammatical knowledge to pull in what I'm looking for. So straight away, its eyes were on long horns. Piece number one. They were like a snail's eyes, so it's making a comparison to what they look like. And again, visually drawing that for the children so that they can see, especially for those who may not be familiar with that approach. It can move in and out like a telescope. So again, I'm thinking, how can I show that to children? Right, it moves up and down, it moves in and out. Can you show me that with your eyes? Show me that with your hands? I'm getting them to constantly act out, so they're having that awareness as well. It had ears like bats' ears, and it had a tubby body. Now I've modelled that for the children. I've picked out the parts I need. So therefore, if I now said, find and copy 3 features of the Samiad, its eyes were on long horns, had ears like bat's ears, and a tubby body. What I would now expect the children to do is, if we moved to another part of the text, so again, I'm going to come to a different text over here, applying that skill. This time, what I now want them to do is, in their pairs, read through and pick out features or descriptive noun phrases and retrieve it. So, model the skill, they now practice as well. And the same goes for if I'm writing a question as well. I can model that response. So again, if we come back to that picture prompt that we were looking at as well. Let's switch between my screen. There we go again. So the first question here, what impression do we get of Irene, the princess? So it's an impression question. And again, as a teacher, it's knowing where you're looking. So because I'm looking at impression, I'm looking for inference. First thing I need to do is skim and scan, find across the text and look for the part about Irene or the princess. Prior knowledge, if I'm looking for Irene or the princess, I'm looking for a capital letter, I'm looking for the name of person, or I'm looking for a pronoun. So again, I'm modeling that skill to the children. So I started again, move straight across, moving across. I'm doing that for the children. Here it is, the princess. Again, I can circle and highlight that for the children to see. What I now need to look for is the verb. So again, it's using that grammatical knowledge, jumping across, she begged. Straight away, I'm now modeling that to the children of what they need to explicitly do when they go and apply that to them second question. Therefore, when they now have a go at the we go question, working in pairs, they've seen what I've done, those steps of success, they're then having a go at practicing in that part of the extract as well. So again, it doesn't need to be the entirety of the text. You can limit that to smaller parts whilst they practice that skill. That way, when they move into lesson 3, that's where they can then apply that to an entire text. They can look at the entire piece. You're training them that skill before then moving them on as well. And as we said, it's always then worth thinking about your prediction skills, or your summarizing, or thinking of an end of lesson plenary in some way that you can get those children to kind of then think about what they've read and applying it in context as well. So those are lesson structures to apply. They're really good ones to kind of think about as well. If we switch back and you're thinking, but where would this knowledge come from? How would I attain this knowledge? This is where we come back to those medium-term plans. Now, the medium-term plans were designed by the English leads, and they are progressive. So they take into consideration all of the 7 skills. And what they do is they map out those skills accordingly. So you are developing and building on them each term. And each term revisiting those skills so that children should be able to kind of get better and show their progression in accordance. Now, if we just have a look at a medium-term plan, just so that if you've never seen one before, again, they're broken down into terms. They give you the text. And as I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use a different text each day. You as the class teacher might want to open up those texts, and you're making that decision thinking, actually, I want to focus just on one of these texts across the entirety of the week, or I want to use one text across 2 days, and then the final text I'm going to use on the lesson 3. Also worth noting that if you click up above, so let's have a look at inference here as well, you click on the actual progressive form, it will open up a planning document for you. And this is where it will give you all of your steps to success. So again, it's giving you that information for you to then put onto your boards. So here, if we can see for inference, you've got those steps to success. But it also gives you the possible question stems that you should be teaching for your children. And what you should be doing as a team, as a group, is going back and thinking, right, in autumn, I've exposed children to these questions here, but actually they've had no exposure to these types of questions. So then when you're coming into your spring, when you're coming into your summer, is again looking at those questions, thinking, which ones have children not been exposed to? Which ones do I need to revisit? And using this as a working planning document to ensure that children have that progression across the entirety of the year as well. So those questions are there for you to look at and adapt and use when planning your reading lessons as well. Okay, so that's the kind of structure of the lesson. And now let's have a little look at some various things that you can do to kind of ensure that children are engaged, it's fun, it's purposeful. And again, you know, at the end of the day, you don't want to just bog the children down with questions non-stop. So gradual release model must kind of bang on. You must make sure that you're teaching that explicit stage first of all. And then it comes to word vocabulary. And again, I've borrowed this from one of our new members of the team as well, Miss Shireen Wilkinson. So this is something that she has used for many years, something that she devised called Rescue. And it's where you're taking words and you are being able to rescue their understanding as well. Now, Rescue has been used quite often across the Leo Trust, but something to clarify is that Rescue should be used when the word has a root word, has a prefix or a suffix. If it doesn't have any of those parts, then the word cannot be rescued, and therefore you may need to explicitly teach children the meaning of the word or to read around in context. So what does rescue mean? It means to read the word first of all, breaking it out phonetically so children can be able to decode it and understand it. And explore whether there are any familiar parts of that word. So what is the root word? What is the prefix or suffix? Have a practice of spelling it. And again, proven that children who write words out, cover it up, rewrite it again, they're 95% more accurate in terms of then spelling it again as well. So really important that children have that opportunity to write out those words. Understand the meaning of a word. So again, can they understand it from its root word? Can you use a dictionary? We're quite good now. We've got Google Chrome, so again, exploring that very quickly and rapidly, although I still would kind of emphasize the dictionary skills. Exploring its various word classes, and then finding its meaning. So here are some examples for you. Fear, fearful, and fearless. Normally what I do is I test people and see if they can tell me as well. But fear, if you were asking children what word class it would be an abstract noun. And again, you'd need to teach that to the children. That's the root word. Fearful and fearless, we're now adding suffixes. So fearful, you're now becoming full of fear. So therefore you're worried, scared, anxious, afraid. Fearless, you have less fear. Therefore you're brave, adventurous, intrepid. So again, you're teaching those skills, GPS skills, alongside your reading. Same with words such as danger, dangerous, endanger, danger being the noun. He was dangerous. She is dangerous. They are endangered. So verb, nouns, adjectives there as well. Now, some of these words don't fall under the same category, and that's where you as a teacher need to ensure that you are secure in your pedagogy as well. And I've got some resources to help you here, is ensuring your Greek and your Latin etymology. So things like geology, geologist, geological, geo meaning earth, geology is the study of earth, geologist, being a person who studies geography. And again, getting children to explore that, they could kind of make their own lists up. That could be one of the activities that you want them to do, is can they go away? Archaeologist, dentist, those kind of things. Actually, what words end in ist? And geological. So again, it's that exposure through reading activities. It doesn't necessarily have to be every week, let's read that text. You might start off the week by exploring that vocabulary, pre-teaching that before going into the lesson. Here's a bank of all the prefixes and suffixes, and also in my folder I've also got a teaching of all of the Greek and Latin etymology as well. They're really nice posters you can display and use in various lessons as well. Just a quick one as well. These are words picked out from the end of year 6 SATS test. And if you look at these are words that have been exposed to children from year 3 upwards as well. So a couple that I'll pick out for you. Over here, you've got vertebrate and invertebrate, comes from the year 3 vocabulary. So again, if the children aren't taught that or exposed in year 3, they're going through the year groups without that prior knowledge as well. Environment is a year 5 and year 6 statutory spelling word. So again, children should have exposure to that word in terms of being able to spell it with accuracy. Ancestors, children should be coming across that word in their various curriculums from year 1 and year 2 upwards. Classification, children do this from an early age in year 1, year 2, when they're looking at wildebeest, when they're looking at insects and they're classifying. So you can see that all of these words, they come up in variety of our lessons. So again, it's about teaching reading across the key stage and across all of our topic areas as well. Play games with the children. So here again is an example where you can do some matching. So you can do some kind of pairing up. You can ask children to kind of do, and again, this can be done on Kahoot and on Jamboards now. So it doesn't necessarily have to be on their books. And these are really nice activities to do for that lesson 1. You know, as a game, can you work out what would be the definition? And all of these words here, well, not all of them, but some of them, again, it has that prefix, suffix for them to kind of work out as well, and giving them alternate synonyms for them to use. So it's a really nice way to pre-teach that activity that may come up in a text. Here again are some picture prompts and sentence starters that you can use to really kind of get the children to think about an idea before going into a text as well. So these ones here have been, we've kind of used these ones from, and I've forgotten her name, I'll have to apologize, but these weren't made by me, these were taken from, and I've forgotten her name, but she's a really kind of good term of teaching of reading. And what these do is these picture prompts, these could be really good to teach children a variety of skills as well. So in the folder, what would these have is a range that you could use with question types. And these are quite nice sentence starters, activities to do at the beginning of a lesson as well as picture prompts. And I'll share this one as well because I quite think this one's quite nice. Again, funny, crazy animals as well. But there are others that you could use as well. Things like Once Upon a Picture, Pobble, they all have various pictures that you could use as well and make that link as well. Songs, using video clips is a really nice one as well, and I really love this as well because it's a nice way to kind of introduce children to poetry. It's a really nice way to kind of introduce children to text. It's also really nice to do at that beginning of that week, that lesson 1, especially when you're doing things such as inference, or you're doing an idea of making predictions, or you want to include variety of vocabulary. Using songs, it engages children, and then what you're doing is you're pre-teaching those skills before then moving them onto the text. Remember, it's that kind of abstract before moving them on as well. So really quickly, I'm going to get you guys to have just to look at. This is one from Kelly Clarkson. And again, where did the singer grow up? Can you name 2 methods of transport? Can you name 2 things that the singer won't forget? I'm giving the children the questions so that when we watch the clip together, they know what they're looking out for as well. It's that low stake retrieval. And then therefore, once we've watched it once together and they've picked it out, I'll then move on to the inference or the interpret question as well. And again, it's just giving it a much more visual response. Now, you won't want to do this every lesson, but again, it just introduces and pre-teaches those skills. So it's worth going back to your teams and saying, you know what, on that Monday lesson or lesson 1, let's, use a video clip. Now, one thing I would say, because I was having a discussion with yesterday, is if you do use a video clip, try turning the sound off. Because actually then what you're training the children, especially when you're looking at inference, is to look at the characters' actions, those silent movies. Because actually they don't get distracted through the words or the music. They're solely looking at the pictures. Whereas with song lyrics, you need it in reverse. You need to listen to the lyrics because what they're doing is almost, they're doing your job. They're actually doing the reading for you through their singing as well. Again, taking the points and then asking the children where the evidence came from. And here it's broken down into the point, evidence, explain, and they can physically see where I've taken that from as well. And what's nice about this as well is that I can annotate this, I can talk it through, I'm explaining that point. And what children key need is that I go. They need to see you going through that process and being able to see that explanation as well in terms of their teaching. Now, in terms of differentiation, how do we differentiate for those lower or those less able children? Well, first of all, think about the complexity of your text. Again, with vocabulary, pre-teaching children before the lessons. It's really key. If you know you're coming up with a tricky word or a tricky part of the text, getting them to read it in advance, read it as part of their homework, maybe send it home as part of their reading. What you're doing is you're giving that children that pre-exposure so they're not coming into the lesson blind. You're removing that worry, you're removing that fear as well. Also, do children need all of the text? Possibly not. For those lower children or children who find it tricky, giving them part of the text, they can still hear the rest of the story when read aloud, but for them and their practice, they're just looking at a particular part. Again, it reduces the amount they have to look at, it reduces that anxiety, and then what you're doing is you're training them to look at a specific part of the text as well. You might also want to think about their questioning. If they're struggling with inference, what you might want to do is build up to that stage as well. And that could be through just smaller questions before moving on to the bigger stage. So by what I mean by that is if you're saying, what impression do we get of this character? Ask the pre-questions. What did that character do first of all? Why did they do that? What was the reaction or the consequence? And then also giving them words to use. Did it make them feel brave? Did it make them feel worried? Did it make them feel confused? You're giving them that scaffold so that they can take that and then they can adapt it into their responses as well. Think about the amount of information that needs to be retrieved. So again, do all children need to retrieve information from the entirety of the text? Or actually, if you want to train that child, giving them just a reduced amount as well. And then also provide them with sentence starters, sentence stems, and sentence prompts. Give them those scaffolds that they can use in the lesson. And you will be surprised actually how much they will rise up because you're giving them that scaffold and then over time reducing it and taking it away part by part as well. So a couple of quick bits, skimming and scanning. I love skimming and scanning. And when you're doing that, train the children to start to look for key bits. Okay, there's always tricks and tips and cheats, and this is where you can now teach children to look for key things. If there's a question asking you about a date, rather than children skimming the entire text, they should be looking for numbers. They should be looking for months, weeks of the year. So actually train them on that. If I'm looking for September, I need to look for all of the words that begin with S, and I can actually skim past the rest as well. If I'm looking for, how many cakes did Mr. Parrot eat yesterday, then I'm looking for a number. So therefore, I'm training the children to look for a digit or a number-based word. Again, questions about a key character, nouns and pronouns, capital letters, he, she, I. Again, it's training the children. I don't need to look through the entirety of the text. I can skim and scan quicker by just looking for what I need to know. Questions about thoughts and feelings. I need to find the character. I need to look for the verb. Verb is going to tell me their thoughts and their feelings. Questions about eating, one of my favorite things to do. Therefore, I'm looking for a noun. I'm looking for food items. And again, that's similar if you're looking for a plant or a planet. What are we looking for? And in questions about places, places could be nouns, because it could be the name of a country, the name of a locality, or again, it could be a preposition. So it's training those children on those little skills of what they need to look at. And again, here's an example taken from a lesson that I taught. When did Dorothy know she was in trouble? When, therefore, I'm looking for a time. Where did Tin Woodspin place his axe? I'm looking for a place. So I'm training those children specifically on where they need to look and what they need to look for. Who was Toto barking at? Who? I'm looking for a person. So already I'm training those children, and again, I'm retraining them every time that I apply this skill to them. The same applies for that inference. And this is where you can use your grammar knowledge. If I'm asking children, how did this character feel? Therefore, train them to look for the verbs, find the nouns, get rid of all of the other words we don't need, process of eliminate. Pick out the certain words, use your knowledge of synonyms and that syntax. The same one here, again, similar question. Do you think Dorothy is brave? Take them through those steps. Well, first of all, do the children know what the word brave means? So clarify that with the children. What had Dorothy done that was brave? Go back to that part in the text, skim and scan. Find me the actions, find me the verbs. What had she done? Why might she have acted this way? Get the children to put themselves in that shoes. Why would she have done it? Again, getting them to think it out, imagine it, act it out, all of those processes in terms of those reading comprehension skills. And then also think about the ones, those hidden skills. Write down one place. Give me 2 answers. Sometimes change the number or the amount that you want children to find, because again, you're training those children to find specific pieces of information. Give me 2 reasons. Give me 3 pieces of evidence. You're training those children on the amounts that they require as well. Don't forget our true falses, our facts and opinions. And these are really nice plenaries. These are really nice quizzes. Those are those low stake ones that by constantly drip feeding them in, children can get better and better them. Whereas if you just do it as a one-off, every half term, and then we're not going to do it again until next half term, they're never going to get better. But actually, if you drip feed these questions in as well, then what you're doing is you're training those children to constantly revisit those skills along the way as well. These are quite nice end of lesson activities for the children to do. Again, that find and copy, year 3 up to year 6, I say the same thing. If it's a find and copy, then you need to copy it with accuracy, spelling and all. And again, that's training those children. Are you as a teacher explicitly modeling that? Or are you just expecting the children to know it? They've got the text in front of them, so therefore they should be copying those words with accuracy as well. And as I said, go back to that finding, 95% when children copy out a word, they're learning that spelling as well. So again, it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. So just to end it, again, I've borrowed this from Shireen as well. Books are really important, and it's really important that you do expose children to high vocabulary and high quality books as well. So these are some of her favorite books, and again, these are ones that I've used and they're brilliant. So Word Collector is a great book about a little boy collecting words, and the vocabulary in there is brilliant as well. One that I've loved recently is the Difficult Dictionary of Words. This really helped me in terms of my spelling bee, and they are some fantastically tricky words that you can put up on the board and get children to explore, and it's a really nice activity for them to do. Plus, children love looking at new words as well. I always say that, you know, in year 1 they can name all of the dinosaurs off by heart, so there's no problem with exposing them to vocabulary. They will use it if you teach it. Some other great books is poetry. And again, starting your lessons off with a poem, you know, it doesn't have to be a video clip, could be kind of looking at a poem and pulling that apart as well. And also poetry that applies to other areas of the learning in the curriculum as well. These are 2 really good ones that I love. One is Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright, takes you through a whole menagerie of animals. Poems are really short, paragraph long, and they're really nice to kind of introduce such fantastic vocabulary as well. And a new one that's come out, I know that Wellbeing and the inclusion team would love this one. Is the Emotional Menagerie, and what it does is it links through all of your emotions and your actions through poems. But again, the vocabulary in there is incredible, and again, taking one of those poems once every week or once every 2 weeks and working your way through that as a reading comprehension, it really does expose children to that high level of vocabulary there as well. Really fantastic book there on that one. And then also there are really great non-fiction texts as well, and lots of inclusive texts that you could be drawing upon and using. That Good Night for Rebel Girls is a fantastic series, and actually those texts are really short. They're really good to use as well. Things such as Hidden Figures, bringing that in again for that inclusive and diversity. And then also non-fiction texts, things like Mythologica, Shackleton's book. There's some really wonderful ones. And again, if you want to have a look at those texts, a really good website is, I'll put it into the chat function for you to have a little look at. Just going to bring it up. It's called Books for Topic. And this has a whole range of books that are suggested for your level or for each of the year groups as well. So definitely have a little look at that as well. And those books, if you do see something or something you want to explore, the old school me would have said, obviously, you may have to dip into your purse or your wallet and buy those books yourself as well. Sometimes we do. But I do know that you have some wonderful English leads. And if you've got some books in there, it might be worth having a chat and discussion and say, look, can we get some of these books in to have a look at and explore and possibly use those within your reading lessons? As I said, you are the experts in what's going to interest your children. Use that to kind of hook it in and follow that structure as well. So I'm going to stop there, giving them kind of lots of food for thought. And as I said, I hope that's kind of given you some ideas on whole class reading. Obviously, if there's anything that you've heard today that you've enjoyed, please shout that message out and spread it far and wide. If there's something that you wish to clarify, please always feel free to email me. And I can always get back to you as well, or talk to your English leads as well. All of these slides will be sent out and available to you. And again, just wish you all the best of luck. Thank you so much for listening today as well. And yeah, have a great Wednesday. And thank you for joining.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. Really
Have a good
good. So looking forward to the recording. I think I'll save that definitely.
Just remind me I need to stop the recording. There we go.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you very much.